All right. Well, that is the miscue of the day so far. Welcome everyone to the webinar. I thought we had started 2 or 3 minutes ago. So welcome to the magic of live TV. My name is Brandon Nyes. I'm the business development manager at Resolute Software. And today we're going to be talking about the anatomy of CI/CD. I have with me today, man, why once I hit live did everything fall apart, Billy? Like, I don't know what happened.
It happens.
Yeah, see, the thing is I started the presentation, but didn't actually hit the start button, and now I'm a little off kilter. Let's go ahead and get started anyway. So the anatomy of CI and CD is what we're going to be talking about today. Before we get started with that, let's go ahead and clear out some of these housekeeping items. So obviously today's webinar is live. If the last 3 minutes haven't convinced you of that, this is definitely live. We are going to be scheduling this for an hour, so we'll try to keep this as close to that as we possibly can. And we're going to allocate about 10 minutes of Q&A time at the end. So if you do have any questions while the content's being presented, feel free to put your questions into the questions pane in GoToWebinar. If there's something that we can handle right then, we'll grab that question and handle it. Otherwise, we'll save it for the 10-minute section at the end. And if we don't get to your question, we will get back to you directly afterwards. Also, we're recording this whole thing, so you will get a copy of the recording afterwards if you happen to not be able to stay for the whole time, or if you want to share it with a friend or colleague, that is absolutely okay to do once we send that out. So with that said, let's go ahead and jump in. So like I said, my name is Brandon Nyes. I'm the business development manager at Resolute Software. Billy Yahov, again, I did it again. I can't get it. Cloud solutions architect here at Resolute. And we're going to be starting our talk here on CI/CD. So what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about continuous integration, delivery, and deployment. The CI/CD kind of moniker is a little bit misleading because that D could stand for two different things. We'll talk about those. And then we'll also start talking about tooling, use cases, practices, and what might be important as far as considerations in building a CI/CD practice for your company or organization. So, all right. So dev and ops, Billy. What's the history here? What's the story? What are we talking about?
Yeah, thank you for giving me the word. Basically, DevOps, that's a practice that's been up in there for about 10 years. And where does it start from? Imagine the fact that we've been building software for cars, we've been building software for mobile phones, and basically everything that you have, even for your watch. And having teams inside a company that do different things and not really in a synchronized way, that actually slows down the process that this product reaches to the customer. And with the time passing by, software companies, they started realizing that they need to start unifying the work that they do. Like the work that's being done by the developers and the work that's being done by the operations, actually to make sure that this code, that this software reaches the customer. And they just started unifying that. They just started putting that together. And that's how the development and operations team started functioning together. And they broke the wall, let's say, between them. That's how it actually became to be DevOps. Development and operations in together to speed up the development process, release the product faster in a continuous way, and get product feedback, I would say, in a faster way to improve and to reach more horizons in the market.
Sure. Okay, so I mean, when we talk about DevOps and like the history, you mentioned you mentioned the wall, which this was the big obstacle where we have a number of developers in a pool and they're all contributing and trying to get their code to come in together. But that specific like task of integration was a bear. And then once that code got integrated and you threw it over the wall to operations, now it's their responsibility and we're just going to keep coding. And so like in addition to there being this kind of handoff of responsibility with the code, there was also this kind of like attitude of, well, once it leaves my camp, I don't care, right? So this DevOps, that breaking of the wall, was as much a cultural shift as it was as a like process shift, right?
Absolutely. It's actually a shift to the mindset, changing the way that you think to build and deliver that software rather than actually changing the way that you build it. It's it's more like, as you said, it's no more a matter of responsibility. I'm doing that, you're doing that. It's more like, okay, we need to deliver this software, we need to satisfy the customer. Let's think what we can improve. And that's an improvement that's not only on the level of engineering team, it's more like improvement of the whole organization. It's more like the way that they think, the way that they know that this software needs to be released and deployed, integrated to the right place.
Right. Okay. Um, I love this little dude. The reason we're talking about CI/CD and DevOps, kind of the umbrella that sits atop the CI/CD practice, is because data has indicated over the last decade that companies that have implemented CI/CD and DevOps as a greater whole have seen substantial increases in efficiencies, substantial increases in quality of code, in time to delivery, mean time to recovery in case there's errors or bugs. I mean, there's a ton of stuff that we're going to talk about in the next few minutes. But this visual representation of this guy, super happy, lying in the right direction, like this is why we're talking about CI/CD today, is because data also shows, studies show, whether you're looking at Deloitte or Puppet or whatever, that there are still somewhere around 50% of companies that haven't started implementing CI or CD as part of their development process. And there's just so many benefits and advantages that you can observe by doing this. And that's obviously why we're putting on this webinar, is hopefully to get this information out into the hands of people who need to start implementing this. And so when we talk about DevOps, and this is a good graphic, because the next question that we have is kind of continuous what? We have continuous integration, continuous delivery, continuous deployment. Is that all of it? Is it just continuous, those three things?
Well, basically, as we've been saying it, it's changing the mindset. DevOps is not only about continuous integration, continuous deployment, continuous delivery. It's basically about doing things in a continuous way, improving your work in a continuous way. It's far different from the way that most of the software companies used to work, used to think, having the traditional waterfall methodology, the traditional waterfall method, where they spend some time to plan it, spend some time to gather requirements, spend some time to actually work it out, test it, and then at the end, when they start delivering it, it's actually not always the thing that the customer expected. And this is actually costly. I mean, this is a problem. That's why people started thinking, how can we fix that? How can we uh, release in much shorter release cycles, I would say. And that's how they ended up with coming up with those continuous integration, continuous delivery, and also continuous deployment cycles. And this is all, it's all a buzzword, but it's basically making sure that they work in much shorter cycles and deploy release in much quicker way that can satisfy the customer.
Sure, sure. So you mentioned one thing there that I think is really important when you're talking about continuous delivery, deployment, integration. It's the kind of brevity of the thing, right? So what we're talking about is small incremental changes to the whole that eventually lead to a substantial benefit. So really, it's again, we're talking about continuously contributing, and we're talking about continuously communicating, which is something that we really haven't talked about yet. But like, there's a feedback element to continuous integration and deployment and delivery that allows you to cut down a lot of that lag time that in older development practices you'd have to wait, hours or days or however long to get feedback on something that now we can get feedback in minutes or seconds, because some of those things have been automated in a way that allows us to do that. So it's really kind of not just continuous integration, delivery, deployment. It's almost continuous everything, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. The whole process of working out the software and delivering it as a product, that gets like continuously improved and continuously developed, I would say.
Right, right. All right. So let's go ahead and cool animation. Hopefully nobody's feeling like this yet. So if you're feeling like this so far, take 15 seconds. It's not going to get too much crazier than this. It's all really fun stuff. And once we get into it, I think you'll catch our enthusiasm for this, and it's going to be really fun. So breath. Here we go. All right. So I wanted to show this quick little slide. Martin Fowler is very known in continuous integration, DevOps in this world. And I really like what he said here specifically about what continuous integration is. It's, when the team takes and integrates their works in frequently, like that's the big deal there. He stipulates that it's at least daily, but I would say as frequently as reasonably possible. And then all of those get verified by some kind of automatic build and detect integration errors as quickly as possible. Do you think you would expand on Martin's definition at all, Billy?
That guy is too smart for me, you know. I mean, it's too difficult to read and to comprehend that. I would say
Sure.
in a really much simpler words, it's correct. It's absolutely correct. And the thing is, when you're working in a team and you build software, let's say you have 10 people working on the same things every day. The important part of that is it doesn't matter if your code works for you. It matters if it works all together with everyone else. And making sure
Yeah.
that this is correct is it all goes through the integration. Making sure that your code integrated with the common code base is all fine. All the tests pass. Everything is green as we all love it to be. And this is
Yeah.
basically about having it continuously integrated. And it's not doing it manually, of course. No one will actually promote doing that manually because you wouldn't spend half of your workday just integrating your work together with the others. It's using the right tool set at the right time with the proper configuration.
Well, and I think our assertion is really you shouldn't be, right? Like you shouldn't be spending half your day doing a manual slash automatable task.
Absolutely.
There's better things for you to be doing. And we may talk about this a little bit more in depth, but this is probably a good opportunity to talk about, some of the things that like CI/CD, but more DevOps, just culturally. Like when you have developers that you get in, like the last thing that they want to do is be sitting there spending half their day working on some menial thing. They want to be working on features. They want to be working on the stuff that drives their passion, right? They got into programming to make cool solutions for people, to solve problems, and there's not a whole lot of value sitting in there working on something, pre-build or integration or whatever. And that's why this is so important. Like we got to free up their time to be doing the things they're passionate about and avoid burnout. And that's
Exactly.
just one of many things to consider, obviously. But yeah, just want to throw that in there. So we've talked about it a little bit already, but why CI? So let's just go point by point here, I guess. Integrating code continuously, right? So the code's more predictable and less tense. We touched on that a little bit here. This can play into that burnout aspect. If you've got a situation where code is all over the place and you don't really have a firm like grasp, things are going to be tense. Things are going to be hostile. Things are going to, that's not a great way to work. So increasing the ability to predict and the odds of it being tense are important. Bugs. How does CI help us identify and fix bugs earlier?
Well, it's basically the part of the process. I mean, when you build a CI pipeline, when you have something automated, it should be also part of your pipeline to have automated tests. Of course, you can't build a car without having those exhaust system inside it, let's say. It should be all
Right.
together. And,
Mhm.
and and this is the process. When you see the CI system working, it will tell you if there is something that's not working as expected. It all depends on your tests, of course, but at the end, this is the thing that rings the bell at the right time before actually the code reaches to the customer.
Right. Okay. And then we're talking about code reaching the customer. So the biggest point of CI is really you get a reliable artifact that's available to deploy at any time, right? So the goal of this is to have something that's very well deployable or deliverable right out of that process, right?
With removing the manual process, of course, without doing it
Right.
manually. Because having
Right.
a release cycle and having to release manually, doing all the things manually, let's say every day. I mean, if you can automate that, why would you have to do that manually?
Right.
Why wouldn't you spend this time on delivering business value rather than doing just tasks that can be done by a machine or a program?
Exactly. All right. So integration naturally leads to delivery and deployment because we make our code, we integrate our code, we test our code, and we have that artifact. Now, what do we do with it? So again, naturally leads to delivery and deployment. So why continuous delivery? Let's talk about this a little bit.
You know what I would say? I would say first, let's go to the next slide, because I think the next slide is actually the pipeline, and then we can talk why continuous delivery. That will
Yeah, that's
also
it.
show the listeners what we actually mean by delivery and deployment. We can talk
For
out the
sure.
difference between those. Yeah.
Yeah, good idea. So this is the pipeline, right? So, and I don't know, can everybody see this? I hope not. I'm gonna minimize that. All right, so whoops, Brandon. There we go.
Okay.
All right, so here's the pipeline. And so what we've been talking about so far is basically from we've got commit change, trigger build, notify build outcome, run tests, notify test outcomes. So basically we've gotten to that little arrow right there, right? We got a package, an artifact, it's sitting there. What do we do with it?
Yeah, it's a good question. You know, I'll try to explain that with an example. Imagine we are working on a project together, and at the end of the day, we build something and we have some artifacts, and we need to make sure we just want to put those artifacts whenever we build it to a place where we can both reach that. It might be Amazon S3 bucket, or it might be even Dropbox. We don't care for that particular specific case. Uh, Delivering those artifacts to a place after the integration takes place, this is actually delivering something. This is the continuous delivery. It doesn't need to be reached by the customer. It might be reached by the developer or a stakeholder, but this is the part where it's called delivery. Having it then deployed to a place where customer can reach it, then this is the deployment cycle. It's the same example. If we are building a website, and if we produce some artifacts which are only for us and we deliver them somewhere, this is the delivery part of it. And if we make sure that at the end of the pipeline, there is something that deploys it to the right place, if it is Firebase hosting, or if it is some other place to, let's say, host static websites, or whatever, if it reaches the customer, then I would say this is the place where we say, okay, this is the continuous deployment part of that whole process, of the CI/CD process.
Sure, so long as it's automated, right? That's like the big caveat.
Yes, having it from committing a change, triggering a change, and then until the point that your change, what you've done, you added a new, let's say, a new color to Facebook, and that this new color reaches to the customer in California. And this is the whole automation process, deployment process, from integration, committing, and to deploying it to reach the customer.
Right. Okay. So let's take a step back and go back to that YCD slide. So this is what we're talking about when it comes to delivery or deployment, and it's probably a little bit of both, right?
I would say both, yeah.
Whoops.
Because
I
in a
keep
good,
clicking. There we go.
yep, yeah, in a good architected system, both of them need to be right in place, and you will have benefits of both of them. At the end of the day, it might be different from every company, it might be different from every product, but the most important thing is that you remove manual intervention. So you don't do over and over the same repetitive tasks over that system. You just automate it, and you have it there. Also, if you need to reach the customer, let's say a couple times a day, if you need to deploy a couple times a day, doing that in an automated way, you just reduce the time to market. You just reduce the time to market of fixed bugs. This is also a really good example for big projects.
Sure. Well, and you mentioned Facebook. I think there's you and I have talked about this before, but I think there's information on the internet that says that they integrate and deploy like what 1,000 times a day or something.
Probably even more than 1,000 times, because they have hundreds of teams and they build something that big.
Right.
So I don't think that a product from that size can actually have a bug and have it there for a day. Even if it's there, if there's a problem, they fix it and it's immediately shipped.
Right.
It has to be.
Right. But that's kind of an example of something where, if there was some kind of manual intervention that was required in that, like it could cause a cascading effect of negativity, and that's not a great thing to do. And this is one of the things that CI and CD can help kind of eliminate, is any of that manual intervention, as well as the time. Like we haven't really talked about the time, but I hope everybody's been keeping kind of a tally as we've been going, because each one of these automatable tasks, they happen every time. So this is like incremental savings every time one person doesn't have to do these tasks. And once you set these pipelines up, they're highly reusable, so and standardized. So and we'll talk about that a little bit more, but just keep tallying up the amount of time savings that CI and CD can net you. It's really substantial.
Yeah.
And we have this slide in here that talks about why DevOps, and we've alluded to DevOps being a bit of more the kind of overarching practice over CI/CD. And I actually pulled this straight out of a Forbes article from 2018. This is verbatim their content. But I thought it was really, really powerful, because it really gets to the heart of what DevOps really has to offer, and that's that you can increase lead time, create new features at a faster pace, drive innovation, high employee engagement and communication. There's things like just radical transparency, just the speed and the required collaboration that has to happen in order for projects to work properly. I mean, DevOps is really built to kind of support and uplift that kind of a cultural shift, as well as the process shift of getting people out of that throw it over the wall mindset and building everybody into a cohesive team that is really driving towards common goals. And just again, leveraging DevOps, allowing you to see improvements in deployment frequency, lead time, and especially on the ops side, like when a vulnerability or a security issue or something comes up, that mean time to repair and the mean time to recovery, those reductions are huge. So again, if you're one of those, if you're in an organization that's just barely getting started, there's a lot of benefits to be had, and it's just super beneficial. A couple other points on DevOps: avoiding tactical debt. We don't want to keep making bad decisions and having to live with the consequences of those. DevOps can kind of guide us in the right direction, right?
Yeah, and as I like saying, basically an organization that wants to adopt DevOps or intends to adopt DevOps is that organization wants to make sure that their engineering team goes to the next level.
Right.
That's actually the thing of DevOps.
Yeah. So, and this to you, like in your opinion, you think this is the next like evolution? This is, first it was waterfall and then agile, and now we're in DevOps. This is kind of the next evolution of how we do software.
This is the next big thing. Yeah, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And to move on to this last point, I did mention this a bit before, but like once you've got the pipelines built and everybody's kind of throwing their code in the same way, the outcomes are expected. Again, predictable. You don't have people that are making their own processes and pipelines to get things done. So you remove this kind of shadow IT. So for your ops or your security or all that stuff, you can standardize and really get a firm hold on some of your liabilities as far as that's concerned. So again, massive benefits. We won't cover all of these here, but these are some of the DevOps challenges that we come across, and it's important to kind of consider some of these because they're often the biggest reasons why CI/CD implementations fall apart. And I've harped on this one a bit from the beginning, which is the cultural aspect. I think that it's a big deal. Like, you have to make sure that you're really supporting a culture that will promote DevOps, and that means you really need to focus on collaboration and shared goals. And when I say shared goals, I mean like shared goals. If you haven't told your people what the goals are, they're not shared goals, they're company goals. Share them so that they can internalize them, and then they become their goals, and then they truly are shared goals. And then yeah, those people, once they've internalized it, they become champions for DevOps, and the whole process becomes a lot easier to manage. But beyond that, there's a lot of, this is obviously more of a technically focused thing. So Billy, test automation, legacy systems, app complexity,
Yeah.
These are all huge considerations, right?
There are also some difficulties from the technology side of view when starting to implement DevOps culture. As the slide says, test automation, there are many companies that currently just neglect test automation, and then they're just trying to go DevOps, they're trying to go with CI and CD pipelines. But, as I said, you can't really have the car without the exhaust system inside it. You need to have the full cycle of things in order to have it properly. If you want to trust it, if you want to make sure that when the pipeline reaches its end, everything should be fine. And part of having that is making sure that you have the right tests, you have the right culture to create automated tests inside your development teams. Having legacy systems. Nowadays, most of the banking systems, they work with software that's probably more than 20 years old. And actually having to automate those is also something very difficult. Having to apply DevOps practices, having to apply DevOps tooling onto those systems, this is something that's probably the most challenging thing. And here comes the place where consultancy companies help. Here comes the place where modernizing that software, where introducing something new, where making sure that if you want to go with automation, you first need to start modernizing the systems. You first need to build a really solid building blocks, and then building on top of that. Also app complexity.
Right. Yeah. Some of the other challenges that we're talking about, it's not just going to happen, right? Like, you got to go in there with a plan. And if you, I'm just going to be blunt. If you think that you can walk into DevOps and just do it, I mean, unless you are the most seasoned DevOps practitioner in the world, I don't see it. You have to have a plan. And again, this stems back to the culture and some of the other things. Like, you have to really leverage the strengths of all the people that are in your team and really get a cohesive plan together, get everybody bought in, and moving in the right direction. Managing environments, obviously this kind of ties back to code complexity or app complexity, but there's obviously a lot of different environments and things that need to be managed, so we'll have to keep tabs on that. Skill set and budget, that's a big deal, and that's, you touched on it a little bit a second ago when you talked about the competence. Like, if you're watching this and you've gotten to this point and going like, I can't do this, this isn't something I can do, there's a ton of people that do this. We're one of them. And so if you don't feel like you have the skill set right now, but still want to start implementing and start learning how to do that properly, there's tons of consultants like Resolute Software out there to help you with, whether it's training or whether it's actually, building the pipelines, providing consultation on the architecture, whatever you need. Don't feel like you have to do it by yourself. And that's really one of the bigger things. Now, if you do feel like you want to handle it on your own for any reason, the skill set is still something that you need to foster, because if you hire for a skill set for today and you don't invest in that person to learn continuously over time, they're going to lag. You're going to lag. The company's going to lag. The product's going to lag. So make sure to invest in the skill set as well as to budget things. In addition, like budget for skill set, budget for training, budget for hardware, budget for software. Like there's a lot to consider. And don't compromise on your budget. If you've allocated, don't pull it out.
There's no free lunch, right?
Right. There's no free lunch. Somebody's going to have to pay for it eventually, and you don't want your customer to pay for it. I mean, unless they pay for it, right? Tools. We're going to talk about tools a lot. We got about, I don't know, 10, 12, 13 minutes left to talk about tools and best practices and things. But we've put a solution here, avoid fragmentation of tool sets. We'll talk about that in a bit, and the reasons why you may want to consider different scenarios. And then leadership support. This is a top-down thing. If there's a disconnect between development, ops, your cybersecurity, like if there's a disconnect between IT and leadership, nothing that IT can do really can remedy that. Like that is something that has to happen from the leadership level. It's something that they have to invest in, which is understanding, the importance of the IT function and exactly what the goals are and how they can help support those. Do you have anything to add on these DevOps challenges, Billy?
I think that's more or less covers it all, Brandon. And the challenges are different. Like if we just theoretically talk about them, we can talk until tomorrow morning.
Right.
It's once you start applying it, you need to be really prepared for it. As you said, work with someone who knows what they are doing, so you don't really fail.
Right. Exactly. Okay. So here's a couple figures that I pulled from a report from Perforce Software. And this information actually is mirrored around the internet and through various reports, like I had mentioned before, Puppet, Deloitte, Forrester. They estimate that delivery of new features and services increased by over 20%. Quality improvements in delivered code is improved over 20%. Revenue can increase by up to 20%. And this is the biggest one, I think, personally, is the failures in production down by 50% or more in some cases. In a number of cases, it's even more substantial, like 89%. And that's just simply because of that constant feedback loop. Like once everything starts to come together and the computer says, oh, I've got a problem, now we're circling back and addressing that immediately, or with a lot more frequency than we would be in older development cycles. So this is really they're huge figures. Again, you kind of have to take these with a grain of salt because everybody's situation is different. But I don't know that I've read any reports that say I implemented DevOps and I hated it and this is why. If there's one out there, I would love for somebody to link me to it because I want to read that. But again, just some figures behind the theory that we've been talking about today. So let's move on to tooling, use cases, best practices. This is going to be a little bit more technical. I'm a little out of school on this, so Billy, you'll probably have to talk a little bit more on these. But we're talking about some of the tool categories in CI/CD. So we have self-hosted, software as a service, cloud service providers, and then we'll talk a little bit about code repositories, yeah?
Sure. Thank you for that, Brandon. Basically, reading out the theory, there is a lot. There is a lot on the marketplace because DevOps and CI and CD, that's been out there for really long time, and it's just becoming a buzzword nowadays. We tried to basically put them in a couple of categories like self-hosted, software as a service, cloud service providers, code repositories. And the idea is not to really compare the products themselves, but actually to compare the categories between each other. What is suitable for one use case and what is suitable for one product or one type of company and what's not. Just as an example, let's say Jenkins and Bamboo, both are self-hosted solutions. The only difference is that Jenkins is a free solution And once you get it, you download it. It's an open source. You install it, you maintain it, you patch it, and whatever needs to be done as maintenance, you just do that.
Mhm.
The thing is that the downside of that is, by the way, it's probably the most prominent CI/CD automation tooling out there. I use it personally. I've seen lots of big companies and prominent products use it. So it's a good thing if you know what you are doing. The downside of
Sure.
that is it's free. So you can't really rely on having any SLA about that. So imagine that you are not experienced enough, and if there is something that goes wrong and you would like to have support for that, you can't really have it with Jenkins. It's a free tool. Whatever you use as add-ons, whatever you use as something, um, just to say, let's say, to integrate it with GitHub or to integrate it with a product from Amazon Web Services, you're
Mhm.
just using something third party, and there is almost no case where you can say, okay, this is not working now. I need to contact someone. They'll be fixing that by tomorrow. This is not the case with Jenkins.
Right.
However, on the other side of things, with Bamboo, it's software by Confluence. It's something that you need to pay for. It's still self-hosted. You need to host it on your virtual machine or yeah, whatever you decide. The thing is, you pay for it, and you get certain service level agreements for that. If there is something that's not working at this point, and you have an SLA that it has to be fixed by 3 hours, or at least you can reach a um, service agent that can give you some feedback or that can give you some information. That's the thing that you pay for. And this is in the
Right.
case where you don't have really the expertise to do it by yourself, or you need something that's more reliable, and you need something that can be um, trusted, I would say.
Right. Right. So, and again, like you said with Bamboo, so and with this example specifically, like again, Billy said we're not going to compare tools. That's really not the purpose of today's meeting. But with these two
Yeah,
specifically, I think because they're so common in the like CI space and CED space, um, Jenkins has a massive community, right? Because it's open source and there's a lot of people that are very involved with building, new little tools and things that you can use in conjunction with Jenkins. Whereas like if you need any kind of module with Bamboo, you have to pay for that too, right? Like there's no freebie there. But you're paying for the expertise ahead of time and that SLA, as opposed to with Jenkins, you're paying for an open book. Like you can do almost anything that you want to do, but you have to know how to do it and you have to know how to maintain it and all of that, right?
absolutely. Yeah, that's the thing. That's the core difference between those. You pay and you get the lunch. You don't pay and you don't get it. So
Sure,
that's
sure. Sure. And from like a consultation side, like we may use one or the other of these tools depending on, a variety of factors too. So like even in our situation, like we don't always go to Jenkins, I think, but you said predominantly you would go towards Jenkins. And I think that's probably just because of the maturity of that product. Yeah.
I would say the freedom that you have, and
Mhm.
also the good marketplace that you can get free add-ons.
Sure. Sure. Um, with open source, like, and this might be a can of worms question. Maybe I shouldn't ask it, but I'm just curious. Like with open source, you do have to have a little bit of a consideration for security, right? Because um, with something like Bamboo, they handle all the security. If something is insecure, that's their problem.
Well, it depends. Security is always both sides. It depends what level of security you're talking about. But of
Mhm.
course, when you pay for something, you should expect some kind of, there should be something included in your SLA. Depends on which level, but there should be. It's
Okay.
not just download it, run it, and do whatever you want.
Right. Okay.
Yeah,
All right. So we've talked about self-hosted options, and these are self-hosted as a service, sort of like you're buying a license with an SLA and then open source self-hosted solution. Now we're going to move on to we're going to talk about as a service,
yeah,
non-self-hosted. So this is something that they host for you.
yeah. Just having a Travis CI versus Azure DevOps. This is not. It's not as you Brandon said. It's not comparing the products, but it's basically comparing the type of products. Travis CI is just something as a service. You use it, but you don't host it. So you don't care about the virtual machine. You don't care about installing the software. You don't care about updating or patching it, about anything. You don't care about provisioning, environments or whatever else is needed to be done, let's say when using Jenkins. So you're using it, you pay for what you use. There is a free plan, which is completely fine. You have a big project, you're using something with different environments. You have something as a pet project, as a hobby project, you just install, you just log in, connect it with your GitHub account, get the free version, and do what's needed. On the other side of things, when we're talking about cloud service providers as AWS, as Amazon Web Services, or Azure or Google Cloud Platform, they all offer also that piece of automation software, let's say, as this particular example says Azure DevOps. So having to compare both, they are both as a service. So as we said, you don't really think about the underlying infrastructure. You don't really think about supporting or maintaining the software. You just use it to your needs. But the main difference between those is that one of them is a cloud service provider. So it provides a big variety of services. And the other one is it just provides a continuous integration. It's Travis CI, continuous integration service. So imagine you are building a product, building a website, which has its backend, which has its front end, just pure static website. And if you're using already Azure to host the backend and to also host the static website, why wouldn't you? You should go ahead and you also use Azure DevOps because it's seamless integration. That's the benefit part of using cloud service provider. It provides you with a variety of services, and this is included. Let's say you might have really good pricing rather than using different things for different cases. So that's what we can put in a nutshell for the difference and for the pros and cons for those two categories.
Okay, cool. And the last thing that we wanted to talk, whoa, I missed a slide there. Oh, I didn't have a slide there. But it was GitHub and code repositories. I think GitHub's the biggest, most well-known code repository in the world, right? But when you talk about, I mean, you can talk about GitHub specifically, but like what considerations would you have to make when it comes to like a code repository in order to facilitate proper CI and CD?
It's easy to use. You know, I really like GitHub. I've been using it for years, and they have the GitHub Actions for, I'm not sure, just I might be wrong, but probably already 2 years. And having it up there, it's really easy to integrate. It's just seamless integration, and you can trust it. You know that your code is relying there, and if you want to automate it, the first step, the easiest step that you can take is just using GitHub Actions, rather than starting, okay, should I go now to Travis or should I go now to Azure DevOps, whatever it is. If it's in the same place, if it's easy integration, probably this is always the win-win situation. This is the first thing to, in my mind, this is the first thing to consider when I'm searching out for an integration tool. If there is not other considerations, of course.
Okay. I just let's go ahead and do a quick recap, I guess. So this is some of the practices behind CI, and this is just to recap. So developers are checking in code, version control, everything's going in regularly. And again, Blaine, I'm sorry for not looking over at the questions, but continuous equals frequent. Yes. If you're not doing it all the time, it's not really continuous. You know, it'd be like holding your breath for an hour. You weren't breathing the whole time. So you got to be doing it on a consistent, frequent basis in order for it to be considered continuous. And then that automation of doing that thing, and I suppose like if you had the bodies, you could simulate it with manual labor, but why not automate it? Just automate it. From here, what happens after? I guess Billy, why don't you take it from here?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's a straightforward process. It can have lots of branches, but at the end, just I'm seeing practices behind CI, and the common practices that developers use. You check in your code. The next step is there is an automated build that runs somewhere on a CI server, might be Jenkins or Bamboo or Travis, some automated tests, and then might be unit testing, functional testing, might be smoke testing, just to make sure that everything that you currently integrate doesn't break the stuff that was there before. Then you have the results phase. Okay, is everything okay? Did the tests pass? Did we break something? And then also keeping in mind that with the time passing by, we should not make that CI/CD process clumsy. So we should not make, if it starts today, if we build it today, if we make the CI and CD pipeline today, if it's take a minute and a half to build a project, it should not be after a year that it takes like 3 hours to build that project. Just keep it
Right.
clean, have your responsibilities, and as this last point says, the automated build process should be as quick as possible. So this is also a really important piece of information here.
Right. Okay. So, and we're not going to talk about the practices of CI or CD specifically today, because I think there's a lot of theory that goes around with like deployment strategy, and we just don't have the time for it today. But there's a ton of deployment strategy that we could talk about. I think the basic practices about CI though are pretty consistent, so we can kind of summarize those here in a bit of a bucket. So we've spent the last like 46 minutes talking about CI, CD. I'm sure everybody's exhausted. So from here on out, it's just going to be easy stuff. I'm going to present a bit of an announcement from Resolute Software. We're going to be launching a managed service around CI/CD, and we're calling it CI/CD 360. So if you've been attending this this webinar and we're that picture, you know, the frazzled head down, woo, 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 the frustration line. It isn't. You're not alone. Like just know that there are people like us that can help you with that, and that's one reason why we're bringing this to market. Is because we want you to be able to trust the people that you partner with, and we're trying to I guess build that trust. We are really excited to start doing this because again, looking at the presentation and just knowing the benefits and the values that you can get from being more efficient, from increasing your employee satisfaction, from code quality, all of these things, like it really is a huge impact. And we've recognized that sometimes it's just a skill set or a I don't know where to start part of the equation. And this is a really easy way to get into it, is to leverage us and our skill set and our people, and really work towards getting your projects moving through the pipeline as quickly and efficiently as they possibly can. So with this, what we're going to be doing is we'll help you set objectives together. We'll look at your infrastructure from a 360-degree view, thus the 360. And then we'll use those things that we've gathered, the insights, and we'll create a findings document. We'll discuss that as well as our primary recommendation as well as alternatives based on those findings. And then depending on what you want to do, we'll start helping you build those pipelines, and we'll manage them, and we'll help you with the feedback element. It's really a comprehensive option. It's highly customizable, so we'll work with you on that assessment. And actually, one of the things that's coming from this presentation, anybody that attended today is going to be entered to get a free assessment. So I will be in the next week going through and throwing those into some kind of random number generator, selecting somebody, and you'll be eligible for a free assessment under this service if you're interested in that. So we'll reach out to the winner of that here in, I don't know, a week or so, maybe less. But keep an eye out in your email for that. So again, just to recap on the managed service specifically, is this for you? These are some of the points to consider if you want that. And again, this isn't also just for people who are just getting started or who maybe need additional training. Like if you are running out of capacity and you just need somebody to help take a look at the pipelines, or maybe help on the consulting side to look at, are these the most efficient tools to be using? Could we streamline by, pushing everything in towards Azure DevOps as opposed to having this fragmented tool set? We don't know. We'd look and we'd help you figure out what the best options for you and your team are. So that is pretty much our presentation for today. Billy, did you have anything to add before we got into the Q&A?
No, I think we talked a lot. Let's leave the
Yeah.
people to actually think about what we said.
Yeah, it's I was a bit nervous to be completely fair. I don't know if it read on my face, but man. Um Barb, thank you. I appreciate you putting that out there. Barb Falcaro is one of our current clients, and she said Resolute developers and staff are extremely knowledgeable and professional. We would not have our very complex product in delivery now without them. That's a huge thank you, Barb. That's a huge statement. And we love working on your project, by the way. Like, it's super fun stuff. And yeah, we just want to kind of help more people like Barb and her team to really get up and moving on some of this. We've got about 7 more minutes for any questions, and we can dive into specific tools, I guess, or really theory questions. Really, it's kind of up to you. If we can't answer it on here, we'll get back to you. But yeah, we'll just open it up. If we don't see a question for a minute or two, I'm probably just going to call it a little early, and we'll let you guys go. Blaine, artifact ARTE versus ARTI. I tried to spell check that one, honestly, and it most commonly came back as ARTE, which I was honestly surprised about that. Blaine
By the way,
also asked.
I'm not seeing the questions.
Oh no, I need
Was that the
to.
question?
Yeah, it was. Blaine Fredrickson asked that one. He also asked what. So, and this was something from earlier in the discussion. I don't recall if we specifically addressed it, but what's the difference between deploy and deliver? And I think we
So what's the difference
can.
between deploy and deliver?
Yeah.
Okay, delivery is something that you, let's say you have a storage, you put it there. So for historical reasons, you can go back and see what the build produced. And deployment, this is the place, this is the point where you actually make it available to the customer. So you deploy it to an environment, and the customer can go there and reach the product.
Okay. I hope that's a clear, concise enough answer on that one. Now there's another question here. It says, what could happen if we don't embrace DevOps?
Well, it's Brandon, would you like to take up on that one, or?
I mean, I could talk about that question probably for another hour.
You're the business guy.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Like, with I want to say everything will be fine. Okay. And I want to say that because we're resourceful, like people are genuinely resourceful. The thing is, though, is that, like, we as humans have leveraged the body of knowledge that we have over time to make, like, everything better. That's the whole thing behind, like, continuous improvement. And I don't think that you will see your project achieve scale or have your team achieve work balance, like work life satisfaction, or like a number of things. We've talked about some of the factors. I just don't think that you're going to see. I don't think you're going to see success as rapidly or as efficiently as you could. And I think that you are going to have some very specific obstacles that you have to overcome, that DevOps would just inherently solve. Like, it just, as part of the adoption of that, it solves some of those processes by removing humans from parts of the equation. So
Absolutely. And
that would
being
be my
competitive
comment.
in the run, and also being competitive in the long run, this is just part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, we've got another question. Can you talk about how you would implement tagging builds that are released to production?
Yeah, well, it's more like a technical question, I would say.
Mhm.
Looking at the time, we said we need to keep it to an hour, but what we can do, we can
So
take
you're
the
saying that's a
name
big
and
answer.
email of this. Yeah, and then we can get back, and then we can get back with a detailed technical answer to this one.
Okay, cool. I guess the answer to that is it will take more than 3 minutes to answer. So we'll get back to you on that one. Oh, I keep hitting my boom stand on this. I hope it's not annoying. This is real life. It's live TV. All right, everyone. Well, I haven't seen any new questions for a little bit, so I will let you go. Again, just a few last minute things. Our presentation today was recorded. You will be getting an email with a link so that you can review this. We probably won't set out the slide deck. I don't think it's all that important, but you'll have the presentation here in, I would say, in the next couple days. I've got to edit it down and some other stuff, so we'll get that taken care of. And then in addition to that, keep an eye out on your email if you're one of the lucky ones to get that free assessment for the CI/CD 360 managed service. There's no obligation on that either, so please don't think that there's anything beyond that. Oh, there's actually one last question. We have 2 minutes. I think we can probably answer it. It says, when is the best time to start a CI/CD implementation?
Well, I would say now.
Now.
Yeah. Because a company will never find the perfect time to do that. It's basically it's a change in the mindset, and you can't say you need to do that in the next 2 months. It should be a small start, and then you need to be doing that incrementally. It's not happening from today to tomorrow. It's not happening. Here's the right moment. We don't have much work to do. There is no such time. I mean, if you want to make money, if you want your product to be successful, just start doing it now.
Yeah, there's an old saying, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Start small. Eventually you'll get to the big goal. And I think we'll end with that. So again, thank you everyone for joining us. It's been a pleasure to present this to you. It's been our presentation on the anatomy of CI/CD. I'm Brandon Nyes. This is Billy Yahov, and I hope you've enjoyed it. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.